In this video, I'll be challenging myself to build HellDivers 2 in LEGO, again. To start off this project, I laid out some 16x16 plates and added in some black bricks around the border. I also added some filler plates and finished tiling off the border. Now I'm ready to move on to the terrain. In game, the vegetation and terrain have a pink hue to them, so this gives me an opportunity to use one of my favorite colors, lavender. Even though lavender is one of my favorite LEGO colors, my part selection in this color is quite limited, so I'll do my best to make this look nice by mixing in a mixture of tiles and plates. To add some extra variety, I'll also be adding the occasional hint of medium lavender, which is a bit darker than normal lavender. I'm also going to incorporate some raised sections to add some elevation to the mock. And just because I can, I'm also going to be adding in some sand purple. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to start working on some of the robots. First, I want to work on the soldier. These are the guys you run into most often, and they're pretty dangerous in big groups. First, I started with the torso. Then I attached the first leg and then the second. Popped on the shoulder and the arm. Then I added an arm with a blade, and lastly, attached his head. Here's my complete soldier. With some robot soldiers now done, I think it's time to lay down the foundation for their base. These areas are usually pretty muddy, so I went for a mix of tiles and plates and medium nougat. I also added in some normal nougat for some splash of color. With that complete, let's move on. The main structure that will be featured in the robot base will be a fabricator. These buildings manufacture more robots to go directly into battle. The only way to destroy these buildings is to throw a grenade into the vent or hit it with an airstrike. To build this building, I'm going to be working on each side individually. First, I'm going to work on the front. On both sides of the door, I added these big detailed columns, and I added in a door full of detail. Then I moved on to the two big vents, and lastly for the front, I added in some small details. With the front complete, let's move on to the sides of the building. To match the in-game design, I also added in some red squares lining the bottom of the building. For some additional detail, I also added in 3 vents which are symmetrical with the squares below. Now that the first side is complete, I think it's time to duplicate this design over to the other side. Around the back, I decided to keep it pretty basic, only adding in some small details like air vents. The last thing I need to build to complete the fabricator is the roof. For the details, I just focused on the 2 air vents on the roof. I think they turned out pretty cool. All that was left for me to do is attach the roof to the main building. This was quite tricky, but I eventually got it. I kinda want to work on the vegetation. The planet I'm building has lush jungles full of bright colors. Thankfully, I got in some parts that will help me recreate these trees perfectly. Now it's time to get back to building. So I started with the trees, and I must say, these magenta palm leaves are really cool. With both trees knocked out, I started with the ground foliage. Another cool piece I was able to use is a lavender elephant tail. I'm really happy with how the colorful foliage turned out. With pretty much everything finished, I think it's time to build our last robot. So I'm going to be building the Devastator. These are large and intimidating robots that only take damage from headshots. They're pretty tough to deal with. To build it in LEGO, I started out with the hips. Then I attached the torso. Added on a big chest plate, popped on his right leg, and attached his left leg as well. Added the right shoulder and the left shoulder. Then I attached his right arm, which has 2 big blasters, and I attached his left arm as well. And finally popped on his head. And that's a fully complete Devastator. Now it's time to add in some final details. I made some fences and placed one of them into the mock, and then I placed a second one. I also added in these big light posts, then I added in these barricades, and another, and finally I installed another lamp post. I also added this machine gun emplacement. Next I can add the Devastator to the mock, and deploy the HellDivers. And finally I can place down the robot outpost. Time to take a look at the final mock. Deploy the HellDivers.